All right, welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker, and you are listening to episode number 50 of the podcast, which is quite a milestone. And today is Monday, May the 29th, Memorial Day. So, of course, we want to kick things off by saying how we're thinking about the brave men and women who have given their lives to protect our freedom and our liberties in this great country of the United States of America. And of course, a big thanks to everyone who is still currently serving. And all right, let's get into talking about some of those liberties we enjoy, such as mixed martial arts, violence, and alcohol. So joining me today, as usual, the man who's been with me since episode 1 and who has been on at least 40 to 45 of these 50 episodes. Jeff, you've seen this thing from its inception. And from the very first beer we cracked on the first episode, those River Horse beers. Jeff, the Animal Wilson, how you doing on this Monday afternoon, my friend?
I'm good, Bill, but you're giving me a lot of credit, but Bill, this is your brainchild, dude. You're the one who set out and was like, you know what, I want to do a podcast. You did your research. You've done research on how to get the podcast out there. I mean, this is all you, dude. You can't let me take anything away from you.
Yeah, but you've been there day and night across the microphone and in a lot of cases across the country, keeping up with my random schedule and calling you 5 minutes before we go on the air. I think a lot of people don't realize how quickly this comes together and how fast we got to throw something together. What are you drinking? Grab something to drink, whatever's close. But no, we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of great talks about a lot of great fights, and we've enjoyed a lot of great alcohol. And the show has been motivation for me to watch more MMA and I guess think about it a little more than I used to, because I used to watch all the cards. You and I used to both watch all the cards, but I guess I wasn't watching it with the same eye. And, the podcast has also encouraged me to drink more. So I guess, there are positives and negatives to everything. I feel like I always have to try new things, and I got some fun new things to talk about in that area after we break down this card. But yeah, 50 episodes, man. I'm still having a great time with it, and I appreciate you being there with me week after week at random times of the day. Today we're doing a day later, but it's Memorial Day. Everybody's got the day off, so hopefully everybody's able to tune in. And thanks to everybody who's been listening every week, whether you've been listening for one episode or you've been listening to all 50. I don't know how many of those of you there are out there, but thanks to everybody who listens ever, because Jeff and I would probably be doing this if nobody was listening. And I think that's what's important. That's why we still have fun with it. And speaking of fun, let's talk about a really fun card that took place yesterday on a Sunday. And it was UFC Stockholm. I believe it was Fight Night 129, if I'm thinking. Oh, 109. Sorry. I don't know where my head is right now. And it was headlined by Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson and Glover Teixeira. I got to say, that was an awesome main event. And overall, pretty good card. You were saying, Jeff, I think the prelims were a little stronger than some of the main card bouts, but for the most part, for a free card on a Sunday afternoon, I think everybody definitely got their money's worth there. So let's start with the main event, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeff, because you and I go back and forth on Gustafsson and whether or not he's the real deal. I thought he looked good yesterday, but I do have some points of contention about his performance. So let me get your thoughts on it first.
Yeah, I was really very excited with this fight. I thought that Gustafsson looked awesome. His hands were really fast. His footwork was good. I felt like Glover Teixeira did a really good job of getting inside. And when he was in that pocket of space, Gustafsson switched up his style, and he was using a lot of uppercuts to really, when Teixeira closed down the distance, he was getting punished for it with those uppercuts. And I feel like we saw some new looks from Gustafsson. He was doing some spinning back elbows, spinning back kick, a la John Jones. So it was interesting. I feel like his head was in the right place, and overall, I thought it was a good performance from Gustafsson. But something that Glover Teixeira did really well, and he didn't do this often enough, is he would aim for a shot. Gustafsson would throw his hips back, and his head would come down a little bit. So Teixeira one time caught him with an uppercut after the failed shot, and I felt like if he had done that a little bit more, he would have had some more success. But overall, good fight from both sides. Teixeira's tough as cheese, man. Um, so good fight. But anyway, Bill, what are some of the things that you thought Gustafsson or Teixeira could have done better in this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they both looked awesome. I think they put on a great main event. I think it was definitely, both of these guys are deserving of being the main event for sure. I love the way Teixeira closed the distance, and he was willing to eat some big shots to close the distance. And I feel like that's the key to beating Gustafsson, because guys who have done that to him, who have been able to close the distance and not let him use that speed and that reach that he has over that advantage he has over a lot of guys in the division, those are the guys who have had success. What I didn't like with Gustafsson, especially in the first couple of rounds, was away and full on turning his back to Glover and running. And what's weird about this is a lot of people who were criticizing Conor McGregor for kind of jogging away from Nate Diaz in their last fight, a lot of the same people were praising Gustafsson, saying he had amazing footwork. So you got to see it one way or the other. I didn't like when Conor was running away. I didn't like when Gustafsson was running away. I always say, when you turn your back in a fight, that's telling me you don't want to fight. Whether you're eating big shots or you're just trying to avoid getting hit, that kind of body language suggests you don't want to be in a fight. And I don't like seeing that from any guys at this level. And I feel like if he were to do that against John Jones has the reach to nail him with some big shots, because Glover had caught him a couple of times when he was trying to run away. And I feel like if he chased him down a little more, or if he had just a little bit more reach, he could have done some damage. Because if you're not looking at your opponent and you get blasted in the face, they always say the shots you don't see are the ones that do the most damage. That could have been bad for Gustafsson. And the other thing was that Glover was able to close the distance a lot, and he was able to finish that one big takedown in the first round, which I thought was a beautiful single leg, and just dumped Gustafsson down. Wasn't able to hold him down, but really awesome single leg. But the takedown defense that Gustafsson showed there would make me concerned. I'm sure both Daniel Cormier and John Jones were licking their lips when they saw, Gustafsson running away and Gustafsson not being able to defend a takedown for Glover Teixeira, who's known for his boxing and his jiu-jitsu, which I still feel like Glover Teixeira has some of the most underrated jiu-jitsu probably in the sport. The guy has a ridiculous amount of finishes. He's a legitimate black belt, but nobody ever talks about his jiu-jitsu, probably because he has more traditional jiu-jitsu. In any case, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but yeah, I feel like the way Gustafsson fought last night, if he fought that way against either Jones or Cormier, you would see a different showing than he showed against both of them in his two performances, which, he gave both of them probably the toughest fights of their careers. Cormier took a beating. A lot of people thought Cormier lost that fight to Gustafsson. A lot of people thought John Jones lost to Gustafsson as well. So those are my points of contention. But in that fourth round, the fact that he was able to still come out with just as much speed in his hands as he had in the first round, that's where he looked like a champion. And those finishing combinations were ridiculous, where he would have the little pawing jab and then that quick uppercut, and he did it 3 times in a row. And it was like Teixeira was just like a few seconds behind. Like he knew he was getting the same combination over and over, but he just couldn't react because Gustafsson's hands were so fast, even late in the fight. And that's where I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, I agree with you on the hand speed comment, and yeah, I agree with you on what you're saying about him running away. I mean, his cardio looked great because in the fifth round he looked like he was coming out for the second round. But I agree with you, man. I'm not a fan of people turning their backs and running away in the other direction. And you're absolutely right. I think a guy like John Jones, with his reach, is gonna clobber Gustafsson if he does that. So something definitely to work on. But you gotta give it to Teixeira and his toughness, man. He was eating some bombs, and he got dropped a few times. And I thought that the ref stoppage in the last round was perfect. Which a lot of these refs we give them a lot of flack for messing up, but you gotta give it to Mark Goddard. He was awesome yesterday. The only comment is in the first round when Gustafsson eye poked him. I feel like Mark Goddard maybe let his Gustafsson's corner get to him a little bit, and because Teixeira should have had time to recover. And Teixeira, instead of saying, I can't see, he said, no, I'm going to fight. So Teixeira, awesome dude. Can't wait to see either of these guys back in the cage. Yeah, I agree with you. Gustafsson definitely needs to work on the running away thing because against a guy like DC or Cormier, they're going to, they're quick enough where they're going to come and hunt you down. And if you give your back to Daniel Cormier, you're getting put on your back.
Yeah, and I would wonder if Gustafsson's corner would want to see as much haste if Gustafsson were in there against John Jones and getting poked in the eye. I think then they would be asking for the recovery time. Just to clarify, and Mark Goddard pointed this out as well, I was looking over the rules, and there is nothing in the rules about giving the fighter 5 minutes. It's actually at the referee's discretion. They are allowed 5 minutes to recover if they're fouled with a groin shot. But other than that, it's up to the referee. And the referee decided, all right, you're not injured. You tell me you can fight. And Glover, when they asked him, I love Glover's answer because they asked him, like, are you good? And he was like, of course I want to fight. And he didn't even respond about like whether his eye was good or not. His answer was, I want to continue fighting. So if you give me time to recover, great, I'll take it. If you don't, I'm ready to go and I'll fight you with one eye. And that's exactly what he did. And he took, man, Gustafsson hit him with everything but the kitchen sink. And that he also didn't hit him with that rock he was hiding in his shorts that he proposed to his girlfriend with after the fight. So let's talk about this. So Gustafsson invites his girlfriend into the cage after his fight. And here's where I'm going to explain why male fighters may not understand women that well. And maybe not understand certain things about being romantic. Of course, it's great. Do it on this big stage, and it's a grand gesture. And I hate to keep shitting on Gustafsson, but I just found this so funny. So his girlfriend, for those who don't know, just gave birth to their child about 2 weeks ago. So for any woman out there, this is a time when they're feeling very vulnerable and probably not feeling the greatest about their appearance after just giving birth a couple weeks ago. Granted, she looked phenomenal. She did not look like she just had a baby 2 weeks ago. But here's this poor woman who just gave birth, is probably not feeling the best about her body. Let's put her on international television with potentially millions of people watching, with a sweaty barbarian who just clobbered a guy in a cage. And then you're going to put her in a situation where she could say no to a proposal. And that's got to be terrifying to her in so many ways. But, luckily she said yes. And his proposal, thanks for having the kid. Do you want to marry me? and it was like, all right. Not exactly like right out of a Nicholas Sparks novel or anything. But I was cracking up. But, I guess she's used to his gruff kind of way of doing things. So, it works for them. But from a romantic perspective, probably not, the ideal scenario for a lot of women. What were your thoughts on this proposal, Jeff?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny too, because he asked first and then gets down on one knee. So the whole thing was just really funny to me. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking that too because his now fiance is kissing him while after this dude is covered in not only his sweat but somebody else's sweat, and he's been hit a whole bunch of times, like his lips bloody. I'm like.
Yeah, it probably wasn't his blood either. She probably got a mouthful of Teixeira blood. So, she's like, yeah, probably wasn't enjoying that too much. And what I don't get is, like, why would you want to put that much pressure on yourself? You're fighting basically what could be considered a #1 contender fight in your hometown. Yeah, you didn't come off the greatest performance in your last fight. There's so much pressure. And then in the back of his mind, he's thinking about how he's going to propose after the fight. So, and then what if he loses? Does he still do it? Or does he wait till they're backstage? Or does he wait? Does she not get the proposal until he wins a fight? That's what I would want to know. How does this work if Teixeira knocks him out or something?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, he's only carrying the dreams of a nation with him because he didn't do too well in his last fight in Stockholm. But now he's batting 500, so good for him. He's engaged. I mean, the whole thing was really funny, like you said. It was just poorly timed. Poorly timed. She said yes. Thank goodness for him, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, just the whole thing was really funny to me.
Oh man, I was cracking up. Thanks for having the kid.
That was the best opener to a proposal I think I've ever heard.
Thanks for having the kid. All right. Well, congratulations to the future Mr. and Mrs. Gustafsson. So let's move down this card a little bit. Really explosive and impressive performance from Volkan Ozdemir, who has quietly, or not so quietly, he kind of came out of nowhere, climbing up the ranks in this division. I think he was still an underdog against Misha Kurkanov, and Kurkanov was pressuring him like crazy, which, may have been the right strategy for him, but it didn't work out so well. So he pushed Ozdemir against the cage, and he landed a really quick and really tight hook to right behind the ear that put him out, that put Kurkanov out. And I don't know about you, Jeff. I didn't even see this punch the first time when it happened live. I didn't know why he dropped. It looked almost like his knee buckled or like he twisted his knee or something. I didn't see the punch land. I had to wait for the replay to actually see what happened. And a lot of people were saying don't blink during this one because these are two guys who swing heavy leather. But man, the fact that he was able, there are very few guys I feel like who can drop somebody with such a short shot like that. And the power of Ozdemir is definitely something to be concerned about if you're in that division. What were your thoughts on this fight, Jeff? And did you see the punch when it was first thrown?
Actually, Bill, I went to the bathroom at the beginning of this fight.
So you didn't see it at all.
I come back and they're like, coming up, the decision. I was like, well, what the fuck happened? So then I see the replay and I'm like, okay, well, where's the rest of the fight? And then I realized that the replay was the fight. So, yeah, I got to see the shot when it happened, but it didn't, it was weird. Even in slow motion, it looked like he kind of just tapped him. And,
yeah.
Misha, which is, I can't even say his last name, Cherkanov. Am I saying that right?
Sure. I was saying Serkinov, but you're probably right. Let's go somewhere in between Serkinov and Cherkanov.
Yeah. So Serkinov will say, yeah, he was down on the floor. I was like, dude, what the hell happened? So I see the replay, and Ozdemir must have some real power, man. For him to land with so much power in such a short space, that's saying something. And remember, this guy did beat um, Ovince St. Preux and Ozdemir. Hold on, I was gonna say something, and then right. So Ozdemir caught Sukhanov in also kind of like a sleeper spot. That spot right behind the ear that'll put you out pretty quick. So Ozdemir, he caught him in the right spot, and he must be able to produce a lot of power to finish like that.
Yeah, ridiculous amount. And a lot of people didn't expect him to take out Ovince St. Preux. That was a split decision, but Ozdemir took that fight, I think, on like a week or 2 weeks notice. So to step in there with a contender like that is impressive. And he said that he wants a ranked guy next. And I don't want to argue with him. I would love to see him in there with a top 10 guy, because he's an exciting fighter. And I think a lot of people are going to hesitate now before they rush in on him like that. So the fight right before that, Peter Sabata with a TKO over Ultimate Fighter alumni Ben Saunders. So Ben Saunders is one of these guys who always exciting. I feel like always puts on good performances, and he's been around a while. He's a serious veteran. He's been in and out of the UFC a couple of times, and stuck to it, kept racking up wins outside of the UFC, earned his way back. You got to respect a guy like that. And Peter Sabata, more known for his ground game than his striking, but this guy looks better and better with his striking every fight. And KOing or TKOing Ben Saunders basically with a Ben Saunders move, the high knee to the chin, was incredible. And I think Ben Saunders was upset that this fight was stopped, but he had his legs buckled twice while he was standing. I thought it was a good stoppage by the referee. I didn't think it was going to go too well for him once it got to the ground. As good as Ben Saunders is off his back, he was crumpled pretty well. What were your thoughts on this one, Jeff?
I agree with everything you said, but also not only that, Ben Saunders that was like his third time getting dropped in that fight. So I think the ref had seen enough. I think it was a good call. When a guy goes down 2 or 3 times like that, you're risking injury and stuff, like brain damage and shit. So I think it was a good call from the ref because Ben Saunders took a licking out of the fight.
Yeah, and only 34 years old. I was thinking that he was a little older than that just because he's been around forever. He was on one of the early seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. Excuse me. And yeah, he's been in some wars, man. I don't think it's the last time we see Ben Saunders in the UFC, but I think we're going to start to see Peter Sabata against some more top-notch competition, and I'm not mad about that because this guy is looking great. His striking's really coming together, and he even said he's confident in his ground game, but he didn't want to go to the ground with Ben Saunders because he knows Ben has a very awkward style on the ground. I mean, for a guy who's like 9 feet tall and is able to execute a rubber guard, that's tough to deal with. Somebody who's got long limbs like that and they're flexible. It's it's really unusual characteristics. Any other thoughts on Sabata or on that fight in general, Jeff?
Exciting fight, and I'm ready to see these guys be in the octagon again. But I think that's all I got for this one.
Cool. All right. So the 2 fights before that, Omari Akhmedov versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and Nordin Taleb versus Oliver Enkamp. I feel like there was a similar theme in both of these fights, and that was experience over talent and experience over explosiveness. And I feel like that's how Taleb and Akhmedov were able to get the victories here. So Akhmedov, countered the explosiveness of Al Hassan with his wrestling, and his wrestling looked great. And Akhmedov's one of these guys who's been around for a long time, and he kind of flies under the radar. And they may have been feeding him to Al Hassan here, who's just been, knocking dudes out. He's never been out of the first round before yesterday, I think. So that was a good test for him. And, to be able to see that he can go the distance with a veteran. And then Nordine Taleb really put it on the young kid, Oliver Enkamp, who was undefeated and, known for flashy kicks and things like that. But Taleb wasn't flinching. And I feel like that's where Enkamp showed his inexperience, is when Taleb would pressure him, he flinched a lot. And it didn't work the other way. So do you agree, Jeff, that experience kind of trumps explosiveness and talent here? And which one of these fights was more impressive to you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with, experience trumps all. And I really enjoyed the Akhmedov fight versus Al Hassan. I was really excited to see both of these guys. They're both really good fighters. And like you said, it was good to see that Al Hassan can go out of the first round. But it was also interesting to see that he was able to survive against Akhmedov, man. He kind of reminds me of I forget his name at 155.
Like a Melvin Gillard?
A little bit, but Akhmedov also reminds me of the other dude from Dagestan, Nurmagomedov.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of pressure and good wrestling, and they do have similar backgrounds with sambo and everything. So it was interesting to see how Al Hassan dealt with that. I felt like he didn't do a great job, despite him being a judo guy and everything. But judo is something that you do in the gi, so it's a little bit different. But overall, I thought all these guys looked really good. I feel like Enkamp, you could see his lack of experience. I feel like he also had some jitters because this was a UFC debut. But I saw some hints of greatness in Enkamp. He reminds me a little bit of Wonder Boy in the way he moves back and forth, and he has the flashy stuff. He also has a similar frame at 170. So both really good fights, and I'm really excited to see where Enkamp and Al Hassan end up in the near future, because I think they're going to make a big splash.
Yeah, I think they both learned a lot, and it was my mistake. I thought you were talking about Al Hassan, which is why I made the comparison to Melvin Gillard, because he kind of reminds me of him with the explosive power, and then if you could get him out of the first round and kind of wear on him, it usually doesn't go well for him. But yeah, I was really impressed with Taleb, the way he was able to look those crazy kicks right in the face. And, Frankie Edgar is another guy who did this in his last fight against Yair Rodriguez. Those wild kicks were coming, and he would just a slight move of the head. Whereas Enkamp, when things were thrown at him, he was, moving his head way out of the way, which is always a clear sign of just a lack of experience, plain and simple. So I kind of like that experience triumphed in these two fights, but I'm also really excited to see Al Hassan and Enkamp grow as fighters, and I think they're both going to be really exciting once they get a few more fights under their belt. So another exciting fight, which was exciting from the weigh-ins, Jack Hermansson and Alex Nicholson. So Nicholson was screaming at Hermansson at the weigh-ins and just acting like an asshole, and he got the bully beat down from Hermansson. So Hermansson shoots like an odd takedown on Nicholson, where he was reaching for his near leg, but he put his head on the far side, which is a great way to get caught in a guillotine, which is exactly what he did. But I guess the ground game of Nicholson was exposed a little bit there, because he wasn't able to get his legs underneath Hermansson to finish that guillotine or to put enough pressure on it to be able to use it to stand up. And then once Hermansson escaped from there, he was just dropping some bombs. And I think this was another fight where, the fighter didn't want it to be stopped, but, he wasn't really doing anything to defend himself. I thought it was a good stoppage there as well. What were your thoughts on this fight, Jeff?
Jack the Joker Hermansson. I loved seeing his ground game. I liked how he took him out, and while taking him out, he also trapped one of Nicholson's arms, which sucks, especially when you're getting punched in the face. He had no way to defend himself. At one point, he ended up turning his back to Hermansson, which is a clear sign that he doesn't want to fight anymore. So I thought it was a good stoppage. I think both guys overall need to work on their ground game. Hermanson, because his takedown, like you said, it was a little awkward, and the way you described it, where you put your head to the other side of the leg, like on the inside of the leg, that's how you get caught in a guillotine, and that's exactly what happened. But I feel like if Nicholson had a better ground game, he probably would have been able to finish that guillotine. But good card, good main card, and the undercard was super fun as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let you take the reins on the undercard because I caught a lot of it, but it was the middle of the day, so I was kind of trying to get some other things done at the same time, so I kind of had it on in the background, if I'm being honest, and I wasn't paying the most attention. So what was the if I had to go back and watch one of these prelim fights, Jeff, what's your pick? What's the Animal Wilson rewind, we'll call it? Which one of these should I go back and check out?
All right, I got 3 of them for you. Trevor Smith versus Chris Camozzi. Don't even pretend that fight never happened. Joaquim Silva versus Riza Madadi. That one also got pretty heated at the weigh-ins as well. That was a pretty fun fight to watch. They're both going at it, but you could tell Silva kind of deserved the win. But Madadi, man, he's a fun dude to watch. So that fight is a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Another one to go see is Bojan Velikovic versus Nico Musoki. I might be saying that wrong, and I apologize. But this fight ended in a TKO, and Velikovic was kind of the underdog going in, but in the 3rd round, he catches Musoki with a combo, and Musaki's legs just give out under him. His legs start spazzing out, and he's trying so hard to stay on his feet, but he just can't. And Velikovic comes in with one last shot and just finishes him. And
yeah, that was a lot of people were posting the video of that, saying he was like he was doing the stanky leg, or like he was just kind of wobbling like the Pinocchio walk when he's like.
Yeah, that was a really good fight. I felt like he was under. He was probably losing on the cards, so he needed to finish that fight. So good win for him. Fun fight to watch. And then Damir Hadzovic versus Marcin Held. Another TKO finish, and that was an awesome fight, Bill. I really enjoyed it. Also, Darren Till versus Jason Ayari. Also another fun fight. So the undercard was pretty good. I have no complaints about this card in its entirety.
Yeah, so Marcin Held, I did catch this 3rd round, or the piece of a 3rd round that there was. I think the knockout came 7 seconds in, or was it 7 seconds left? In either case, he was rolling for a heel hook, and he went from way outside to roll in there, and he just changed levels so late. So he came in from real far away, and then he changed levels so late that he just got blasted with a knee. I think, the guy's an amazing grappler. We've seen it in Bellator. We know what he's capable of. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to show too much in the UFC, and now he's dropped 3 in a row, although a lot of people, including Joe Lozon, believe that he beat Joe Lozon. So he's got that going for him, and I think that may be the reason we don't see him get cut here. But maybe just a little overconfident in his grappling, the way he tried to roll for that heel hook technique, that heel hook entry. Man, it sucks because he got sloppy and he paid for it big time. All right, any other kind of encompassing thoughts on this card, which overall, like I said, you can't complain for a Sunday afternoon, free on Fox Sports 1. I thought this was a really solid card. Any final thoughts on this, Jeff?
I just one last thing. I really feel like with his performance against Teixeira, I think Gustafsson put his name back into the title contention hat here. But I don't know if it was enough to pass him to let him skip in front of Jimmy Manuel. We'll see. But overall, really fun card.
Yeah, which is kind of awkward here. I feel like Gustafsson will probably get the pass since he had such close fights with both Cormier and Jones that, you know, there's a lot of clips they can use to market this fight against either of them. And then him and Jimmy Manuwa are pals also. So I believe they train together now, and Gustafsson has a win over Manuwa. And after that, I think they started training together. So they're like buddies. So you're not going to be able to put them against each other to eliminate. And yeah, I feel like Manuwa, as much as he was talking to try and get the fight against Cormier, I think he may take a step down and let Gustafsson take this one. He's expressed some interest in taking a boxing fight for some reason, which really annoys me that a lot of these guys are speaking out and saying that they want boxing fights. I don't know where this is coming from. Well, I know where this is coming from because Conor McGregor did it, and once he does something, then a lot of these guys think, you know, that's the way they're going to make money too. I think what a lot of them don't realize is there's not that much money in boxing, and it's the same as the UFC. You know, the top guys that are billed on the marquee, they're getting huge paydays. The rest of the guys on that card are splitting like 8% of the total payout for the fighters. It's ridiculous. I feel like a lot of the lower level boxers, you know, they're getting paid the same as guys on the prelims as the UFC, if not worse. There's not a lot of money for mid-level boxers, which is what a lot of these guys would be. You know, if somebody like a Jimmy Manuwa takes a boxing fight, he's going to be, you know, who's he going to fight? He's not going to fight a big name because it wouldn't make sense. And I don't feel like there's a lot of big names at his weight right now anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I get frustrated when I hear these guys saying like, oh, I'm going to go to boxing because I'm not making enough money. And it's like, well, you're not going to make it there either. So you might as well stay in MMA and be entertaining. And that's my thought on the whole boxing thing. So Jeff, I went to the movies last night and I saw the new Pirates of the Caribbean, which is the 5th installment, Dead Men Tell No Tales. I got to say, I loved it. And I think it opened to some harsh criticism at first because like, oh, it's another Pirates of the Caribbean. I like all of these movies. I can't tell you the plot of any of them except for maybe the first one, but they're just the way they're shot is so awesome. And just, you know, the way they're able to, obviously it's Disney and there's like ass loads of money that gets put into them. But I really feel like production wise, they're like some of the best movies to watch. If you just want like a visual stimulation, this one was awesome in the theater. And I bring this up on this show because, you know, I very rarely talk about things that don't have to do with MMA or alcohol, but I did bring in a flask of my Black Pearl cocktail. I was like, I'm going to see the Pirates movie. I did the Black Pearl thing on YouTube. For those of you who haven't seen, the last cocktail recipe I posted was a black spiced rum cocktail. It's up on YouTube now, so go check that out if you haven't yet. Real simple, only a handful of ingredients, which is the way I try to keep all my cocktail recipes. And so I brought in the black spice rum. So I'm sitting there, I'm in the movie. I got my rum in my flask, and you know, there's sword fighting and there's all kinds of action and like the awesome cinematography and everything like that. I really enjoyed it. And I don't know if it was just because of the rum or because it was a really good movie, but I was really entertained by it. I thought it was the best one since the first one, actually. Yeah. So, any thoughts on that? Have you tried a Black Pearl cocktail yet, Jeff? And have you seen the movie, or do you have any plans to see the movie?
I actually might go later today to see that one because I am excited for it. The Black Pearl cocktail, I have not had a chance to try it, but I want to. I'm going to try hopefully next weekend or this weekend coming up. Definitely gonna try it. But I actually went to the movies last night too, and I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and
All right.
I absolutely loved it. I feel like it's such a different take to some of these other superhero movies, and I feel like Marvel really does a good job of creating this other universe. Because it's like outer space and all that. So it was a fun movie to watch. Um, and yeah, dude, I'm excited to see Pirates of the Caribbean later.
Yeah, that's another. I never saw the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but I usually am not into like science fiction stuff, but I do like. I do appreciate like the production value and like what they're able to do with the graphic design and the CGI and everything like that. Which, from what I understand, a lot of it comes out of Canada these days, because I guess they do excellent work, and it's cheaper than using Hollywood. So that's what I hear anyway. I'm no expert in movies by any means, but I am an expert in bringing drinks into the movie theater while I enjoy the movies. So that's one of my favorite pastimes is bringing booze into the movies. And if you've never brought booze into a movie, you've been movie going wrong for your entire life. And while we're on the topic of booze, I want to bring up what I'm actually sipping on right now. Every time the camera flips to Jeff, for those of you watching on YouTube and not on iTunes and everywhere else. So my next cocktail video is going to be a little bit more complex. A lot of people were asking for a tequila recipe. So rum and tequila were the two top votes when I put out a poll on Twitter. So I got this new tequila and I stumbled on it by accident. And I'm really glad I did. It's called Teixeira, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, means earth. Okay, he's nodding, but he was also sipping water. So Teixeira tequila from Mexico. This is awesome stuff. And what I did, I don't want to give away what I'm going to do for the cocktail, but you can see that half the bottle is gone, and that's not because I drank all of it. So I took some of it, and this is my latest infusion. So if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I'm big on infusing liquors myself. That way you don't get like all the sugar and garbage that's in flavored liquors. So I took the tequila and I sat it in coffee beans for a couple of days. And I've already strained this out. It's ready to go. It's ready to use for my next cocktail video, which is going to be really interesting. It's something a little different, a little bit more complex, but I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun. And the tequila really absorbed the coffee well. I used some dark roast coffee beans because I like dark roast coffee, but coffee and tequila go together really well for people who don't realize, or you've never had like a Mexican coffee, which is just coffee with tequila in it. Just similar to an Irish coffee, which is coffee and whiskey. Yeah, so I got my infused earth tequila, and I'm ready to go on the next video. And in the meantime, I'm happy to sip on some of this neat. And if you've been listening to the show for a while, you also know that I'm a big fan of sipping on tequila and not taking a shot of it. But as with anything else, drink it however the fuck you like it, because that's what life's all about. So if you want to sip it, sip it. If you want to take it in a butt funnel, you take that shit in a butt funnel. So Teixeira's tequila, Jeff. Next time you're looking for a fine tequila to impress a lady friend, and you want to show you have a sophisticated palate, you pick up a bottle of this. It's got like the cool black rope around the neck of it, which is, a little morbid, maybe it's like an autoerotic asphyxiation kind of thing. But yeah, really cool bottle. It's got like the agave plant sticker in the back, so it gets magnified through the tequila. Yeah, so we got all that going. So you've been sipping on anything interesting over there, Jeff?
Yeah, Bill. So as I was watching the fights yesterday at 11 a.m., I was drinking some Buffalo Trace. I remember we've been talking about Buffalo Trace a few episodes back, and I wanted to try it. And Bill, I was disappointed because, to my chagrin, there were no traces of buffalo in the all jokes aside, though, I really enjoyed it. I put a splash of water in it to really bring out some of the flavor. And dude, it's heavy, man. It hit my nose pretty hard, but it goes down so smooth. It's like
Hmm.
drinking silk. I love it. So I'll probably be sipping on that for a while because I still have the bottle left over. And to go with it, Bill, I had a Dogfish Head Palo Santo, which
Okay.
is a darker ale, and it's you told me is actually it's finished with Palo Alto wood. So you get on the back notes, you get some of that woodiness that goes really well with the whiskey, and I just like it. It's dark, so it's a little bit more malty too. So it kind of reminds me of like dark chocolate a little bit.
Hmm.
No, I made a mistake because unfortunately I didn't have room in the fridge, so I left it out for about 10 days. And then to get it cold again, I thought, well, let me put it in the freezer for like 20 minutes. It'll get
Yeah.
cold quick. But Bill, when I got it out and tried it again, it was not the same taste.
Yeah, you and I were having a conversation about this before we started recording. And first, before I recap what I told you earlier, I want to tell you how proud I am of you with the buffalo trace and the splash of water to open up the flavors, and the way you broke down the taste of the whiskey and the taste of the beer. You've come a long way in these 50 episodes, Jeff. But yeah, as far as the temperature of the beer, if you buy beer cold, keep the beer cold. It doesn't have to be, ice cold, but once you let it get warm and then you chill it again, it really affects the chemistry inside the beer, and that's the way that beers get kind of skunked. And I know you want to have the beer as soon as possible, so you put it in the freezer. And the drastic temperature changes, it's just like a drastic temperature change would affect your body. If you're out in 101 degrees weather and then you come inside to a room that's like 60 degrees because the air conditioning is blasting, you're going to catch a cold. Or if you go outside and it's freezing cold and you come in and the heat's too high, it messes up the chemistry in your body and you get sick. Same thing with the beer. Beer gets sick when you when you drastically change the temperature. If you're gonna do something if you're gonna have like a Busch Light, or like a light beer that doesn't have as much of a complex flavor to it in the beginning, a Coors Light, yeah, throw those things in the freezer. It's not really gonna affect the taste that much, but and then if you have like a really flavorful beer, maybe you won't notice as much either. But yeah, drastic temperature changes are never good. But again, great job with the bourbon, sipping on it the right way with a little splash of water. Um, and yeah, Buffalo Trace, man. I'm kind of sad that the last bottle I had of that is gone. And I feel like, I was saying at the beginning of the show, I feel like I have to keep trying new things. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do some repeats here. Who's gonna know? Now everything's on video. People are gonna say like, "Hey, you already did Buffalo Trace." I'm gonna say, "Well, it was that good. So if you didn't try it the first time, listen to me now." All right. So lots of great alcohol banter as always. So we got another card coming up. We're back to pay-per-view with UFC 212 next week from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it's headlined by the unifying title match between Jose Aldo and Max Holloway, the interim champion. Um, there was really no reason other than selling pay-per-views to have Max Holloway fight Anthony Pettis for an interim belt. But, they did it, and he's got a belt now, and great. But this is the real championship fight. So Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, the champion versus the interim champion. What are your thoughts on this fight, Jeff? Does this one get you excited at all?
I'm excited to see how Max Holloway does because he's had some tough fights and he's beaten some tough guys. But this is Jose Aldo, man. This is the OG of the 145ers, man. He's a tough dude. He hasn't lost before up until the Conor McGregor loss. He hadn't lost in like 10 years. So this is going to be a real test for him.
Yeah,
And I think that Holloway has the tools to do it, though. He's got good reach. He's really good at using that reach. His ground game is pretty solid. He's getting better all the time. I think he can pull this one out. But, you can never rule out Jose Aldo because he's Jose Aldo. So, he's good all around. He's got power in both hands. He can come at you with crazy strikes like flying knees and stuff. So this is going to be a really good fight.
yeah. I think a lot of people, especially newer MMA fans, they don't realize what Jose Aldo was like. The spectacle of Jose Aldo back in the WEC days and his early days coming over to the UFC. And I feel like that's because the UFC marketing hasn't really done him justice, because they build up the more marketable characters, so to speak, which you can't blame them for. I mean, they're in the business of promotion and marketing, so they've got to take the people who are the most marketable and put them up on a pedestal. But that's why the podcast world is such a great place, because we can remind people, what Jose Aldo was. And a spectacle is the best way to describe it. I mean, he took guys who were top level competitors and made them look like children the way he beat up on them. And like you said, power in both hands, power in both knees, power in both legs, power everywhere. And for the longest time, we heard that he was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but we never saw it because he was just burning through competition in the WEC and just demolishing people. So go back and watch some old Jose Aldo fights if you want to see, vintage Jose Aldo. All that being said, he doesn't seem like the same person since Conor McGregor. And I don't just mean the knockout. I mean everything that he was put through building up the fight between those two and being taken on that world marketing tour. He's not a guy who likes the spotlight, and he's a fighter through and through. And I feel like that really fucked with him. Granted, and then he also doesn't understand why he can't get a rematch with Conor. Because there's so many politics involved there, and people who are diehard Jose Aldo fans are really pissed off about that, and rightfully so. And then you got Max Holloway, who's on a tear, 10 fights in a row, and it was a murderer's row of people. I mean, Anthony Pettis, Cub Swanson, I think Ricardo Lamas, dude, just killers. And he's earned his title shot for sure. It's gonna depend. We know what Max Holloway is showing up. It's gonna be the Max Holloway who's on a 10-fight winning streak, and he's got a fire under his ass, and he's got something to prove because he feels like he's not a real champion. The only X factor is gonna be which Jose Aldo shows up. It could be the Jose Aldo that fought Frankie Edgar that just kind of kept him at bay. Frankie Edgar the second time just kind of kept him at bay and kind of neutralized him. It could be that. It could be, if it's the old school Aldo showing up, then Holloway's got a long night ahead of him. And I'm sure he's preparing for that, Aldo. But yeah, as far as this fight goes, you got to kind of give a slight edge to Max Holloway, unless, it is that old school Jose Aldo that shows up. The co-main event of this card is one I'm really excited for. Claudia Gadelha against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who both have given tough fights to the champion, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Gadelha has lost to her twice. Kowalkiewicz lost to her once in a really, really close fight that was just wild. I mean, they were still swinging like crazy in that 5th round of that fight. Who do you like in this one, Jeff, between Gadelha and Kowalkiewicz?
I'm going to be honest with you, Bill. I'm super excited for this fight, but I could not tell you who's going to win. They're both such good fighters. They're both super well-rounded. Kowalkiewicz, you don't see too much of her jiu-jitsu, but she has it. She has grappling. She's really good on the ground. So is Gadelha. On the ground, I'll probably give the advantage a little bit more to Gadelha, But standing, I don't know who you give it to, man. They're both very, very good fighters. They've taken Joanna and Jacek into deep water. Kovacevic, especially, I think she knocked her down at one point in like the fourth round of their fight. So I can't tell you, man. They both have tools that make them lethal, and they're good all around. So I'm excited, man. I'm more excited for this fight than the title fight, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. And Gedalia, I think, has held down Joanna and Jacek longer than anyone else has been able to. She's definitely got great wrestling. She's got awesome jiu-jitsu skills. But Karolina Kowalkiewicz has got great takedown defense as well, and she's got spectacular striking. So this will be a good one, and this will be one that won't have a lot of hype behind it because neither of them are really big trash talkers. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is one of these fighters who seems like so innocent. She's like, she's very polite, very well mannered. They interview her, and they're like, "So, how's your training?" And she's like, "I like cookies." And she's like very, very cute. You don't think of her as like a killer, but then she gets in the octagon and she's fucking killer. So that'll be a fun fight. And then we got Vitor Belfort and Nate Marquardt, which would have been awesome, 5 or 6 years ago. And so I don't really have an opinion on that one. I don't really care for that fight. I would have loved to see it 5 or 6 years ago, but the sleeper fight on this card, I feel like, is Eric Silva and Yancy Medeiros, who both of these guys are kind of hot and cold, but I feel like that's because their fight style is like balls out. These guys go for broke, and sometimes it works in their favor, sometimes it doesn't, but I feel like that's what makes both of them really exciting. And I feel like you need to tune in for this fight, everybody, because this one is going to be awesome. Yancy Medeiros, Hawaiian guy, I believe, trains with the Diaz brothers. He's got like a very brash style to him, and Eric Silva has had some awesome fights as well. And both of them, if you look at their records, since coming in the UFC, it's like a lot of red and green, back and forth. They've lost some big fights. They've won some big fights. I'm excited for this one. Well, any thoughts on the Vitor Marquardt fight or Medeiros Silva, Jeff?
Yeah, Vitor versus Marquardt. I don't really care anymore. Like you said, man, 5 or 6 years ago, yes, put it as the co-main event. Now, Vitor got destroyed in his last fight. We did a good episode on that. And, I just name Marquardt. I don't even know what you do with him anymore. But Eric Silva versus Yancy Medeiros. Bill, this fight is, I agree with you, man. I think there's the dark horse. This is a sleeper. This could have potential to be fight of the night, man. Eric Silva goes in there like Terminator every time he fights. Yancy Medeiros, I don't know him too well, but that name rings a bell, and I know he's a good fighter. So this is gonna be good, man.
Yeah, fuck yeah. All right, UFC 212, Rio de Janeiro. Gonna be an awesome pay-per-view. I'm excited to check that one out. I'm excited to get into a little more of this tequila today and enjoy the rest of Memorial Day. So I wish the same to all of you. I hope everybody is thinking about all the troops who have made the greatest sacrifice for our country and made it possible for us to do things like this, and for us to enjoy a day like Memorial Day when people have the day off and people are just able to relax and spend time with their families. And so thoughts go out to all those troops who made that sacrifice and to all of their families. If you would like to have a conversation with either of us about anything we've talked about or anything in general, if you have some new drink recipes or some new liquors or beers that you want to recommend to us, please reach out to us anytime. You can get Jeff at @animal_Wilson on Twitter. And of course, you guys all know where to find me by now. It's at MMA on the Rocks on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. New to YouTube still. So thanks to everybody who's been checking that out. Or you go to MMAOnTheRocks.com and you can send me a message that way. so please feel free to reach out. We always, like interacting with everybody who's listening to the show. And if you're listening anywhere else, you can get the show on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, any of your favorite podcast platforms. So for Jeff the Animal Wilson, my name is Bill Welker. Thanks for tuning in to episode 50. And for the other 49 episodes, if you have. And that's all we got for this week. Cheers, everybody. Goodbye.